And we are once again joined by a former NTSB investigator. Greg Feith is joining us again. And Greg, you were with us before we had to go to one of the news conferences. And now you've heard, you may have heard what the governor has said here, that we have at least 3 fatalities. He does believe that number will grow, 11 injuries, some significant, and he believes that number will increase as well.
Yeah, when you have that type of accident, and with the businesses, especially warehouse-type businesses where you employ a lot of people, yeah, you can expect, especially given that the accident happened during a workday. It's tragic, but yeah, I would agree with the governor that those numbers could escalate.
And Greg, the governor saying no hazardous cargo on the plane. Does that surprise you at all with what you saw in the video? Well,
hazardous is a very vanilla term sometimes, because if you're carrying computers with lithium batteries, that's considered hazardous. But they probably looked at the manifest. There's nothing in there that, you know, kind of like a train when you have a spill of, you know, hydrochloric acid or something to that effect. There's not that level of hazardous chemicals on this airplane or hazardous materials. So that's a good thing. I know that they had a shelter in place and they wanted everyone to close their windows and any system that would suck the air in from outside. That's out of an abundance because you still have toxic fumes from post-crash fire.
Greg, give me your thoughts on this NTSB investigation, the scope of it, the size of it, how long you think it's going to take once they are in Louisville, if they aren't already here in Louisville, considering the video we see of the plane actually crashing on takeoff?
Given the size of the debris field, Doug, that it's going to take a while. Just because the enormity of the debris field, trying to ferret out aircraft parts from other maybe vehicles and things like that. I did a cargo accident years ago where the cargo airplane, it was a large 4-engine transport that crashed in an auto salvage yard with 10,000 cars. So it took us better than a month to find aircraft parts and sift them from, or separate them from auto parts. So the on-scene portion could be, you know, very lengthy. And again, a lot of it could be burned, so it'll just be picked up.
Greg, are you still with us? Okay, it appears we may have lost Greg for just a minute. Maybe we can get him back in a few minutes.
He's been very helpful here through this entire tragedy. As we've been watching this was the scene earlier as our crews were heading to the airport. Again, this smoke plume was seen all across the community because of this clear day we had today. We were getting photographs from people all over different parts, miles and miles away from Louisville, seeing it. And then we have the video of the air crash, which we had an aviation expert on earlier point out early on. As he saw that video, a major fire on the left side of the jet. He said it barely got 175 to 200 feet above the ground. So let's pick up with you, Greg. I've been wanting to ask your opinion about the video. We had an aviation legal expert on earlier. As you've seen it, the actual crash happening, the major fire on the left side of the jet, barely got 175 to 200 feet above the ground. His estimate, barely becoming airborne. Give me your thoughts there early on as an investigator. What you were looking for when you see that scene.
Well, first of all, from early information I have, there's a lot of parts of that engine on the runway. So whatever took place during the takeoff roll with that left engine happened while the airplane was still on the ground during the latter stages of the takeoff run. Those parts are going to be extremely important to determine the sequence of failure of that left engine. Now, the problem with wing-mounted engines is the fact that when you have a catastrophic failure where you have uncontained parts, the fuel tanks sit in the wings because there's fuel lines that go from the wing tank through the pylon into the engine. Once you have that separation, or you have parts that have breached the fuel tank. Now you have a massive fireball because you have fuel that's coming out of the tanks atomizing in the slipstream as the airplane's moving, and you have this large fireball like we see in that video. So it's going to be imperative that the investigators really put together a very good timeline as to what failed, when it failed, and what the crew may or may not have known about the failure, because we've seen this type of accident before where we've had either a catastrophic engine failure or, in this case, where if you have the majority of the engine separating from the aircraft. We had an accident like this with a DC-10 years ago coming out of Chicago, where right after takeoff, the left engine actually separated from the wing. And the airplane, because of the crew's action, they couldn't control the airplane, and it crashed shortly after takeoff coming out of Chicago O'Hare.
Greg, yes, I'm sorry, keep going.
Well, I was just going to say, so it's going to be very critical that that timeline is established, which they're going to use cockpit voice recorder, flight data recorder data, any witnesses, because as we've seen with the witness videos, there's always a camera somewhere. So there's a lot of security video that'll probably be available to the investigators, given that that is UPS's hub. So they're monitoring ramps and runways all the time. So all of that's going to be very critical in putting together a very well-developed scenario as to what failed, when it failed, and then how was it handled after the failure.
If you could, in your experience with other disasters like this, when we see this explosion and then how big the fire has gotten, you've seen the video, how long would you guess, if you would even guess, to how long it would take to put this out?
I think with what the fire departments, the first responders are able to do, we typically use foam when we're fighting aircraft fires, because that is the fastest way to put the fire out. Well, not all metro or metropolitan fire departments are equipped with that amount of foam to be able to put this out. So if they're fighting all of these little fires, these structure fires, that in and of itself is a science of putting out these structures, because the aircraft itself, once those wings opened up and the fuel was spewed out and atomized, that was the ignition to all of these other structures. And if you're talking large warehouses where they have combustible materials in it, this fire could burn for a day or two, if not longer.
Yeah, the fire chief even mentioned trying to locate more foam from some of these industrial businesses that are around there.
Yes, and a lot of the, at least with airport hangars, it's required that they have foam systems within the hangar. So if there is a aircraft fire in a hangar, the system will start to dump large amounts of foam to put the fire out. Some of these businesses may or may not have a similar system depending on what they may be storing in their warehouses.
Greg, in all the years you've investigated these crashes, the one thing we're dealing with in Louisville, of course, is this huge smoke plume. Have you seen anything like that before, where entire communities are being impacted miles and miles away from the focal point of the crash?
I've seen where we've had a catastrophic, like this cargo accident I did in California. There was a large smoke plume that drifted over the Sacramento. It didn't last very long because the fire was extinguished very quickly. But when you have a large, expansive wreckage area and debris field, and you have, of course, multiple structures on fire, this smoke plume is going to reside for a while. It's kind of like a wildland fire, where as long as you got something burning, it's just going to feed that smoke plume. Hopefully, the first responders will be able to get a handle on it over the next, probably, I would expect 12 hours, maybe 24 hours for sure. But if they have the support from other mutual aid departments, they could get this hopefully extinguished pretty quickly.
You've done this for quite a while, and you know that UPS's major world port is based here. What is the reputation of the Louisville airport as far as its safety and its emergency responses?
When you have a facility like Louisville or some of the other hub airports for the major cargo haulers and even passenger carriers, one, the facility is very well manned as far as resources. Two, they understand because this is a world hub for UPS, they are carrying cargo, which is different than passenger carrying airplanes from the sense that the cargo can be combustible. There's large amounts of it. They have to have at least the physical resources and assets to be able to handle any kind of accident that would happen on the airport property itself or in the immediate surrounding area off the airport. They've always had a good reputation. I know UPS very well, and safety is number one with them because they are a large cargo operation. And, of course, the airport, they have a very good working relationship. They have to have that for events like this because, again, one of the things that everybody is concerned with, especially when you have airports that are surrounded by either housing communities or industrial areas, is the potential for an event like this. Now, are they going to learn lessons from this? Most likely they will do a complete debrief. Once everything calms down and they can reflect back, they will probably make changes not only at the airport but in the surrounding communities with mutual aid, I would expect, because I've been part of those kinds of discussions where we've debriefed well after the event to see what worked, what didn't work, and how things can be improved.
Greg, thank you very much. I'd like you to join us again after the next briefing. That's coming up at 9 o'clock. We're going to hear from the Louisville Airport Authority, and the mayor of Louisville will have a news conference there. We appreciate your insight. Again, as Greg was talking to us, he broke some news here for you as part of this investigation, saying that he has learned that many parts of that engine are still on the runway.